Well, I'm really excited to welcome our final speaker and guest today as we wrap up our class. I have next to me Antoine Bethea, 3 times Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion, a proud alumni of Howard University. He played for Indianapolis for 8 seasons, San Francisco for 3 seasons, Arizona for 2, and the New York Giants during the 2019 season. Antoine has been involved in numerous charity causes, including supporting efforts to help breast cancer survivors. He also supported PETA's anti-fur campaign. He was named an Arizona Cardinals Walter Payton Man of the Year recipient. In January of 2021, last year, he announced his retirement from the NFL. He hosts the Man to Man Pod with his co-host, Darius Butler. He's married to Samantha, who he met in college at Howard. They have 2 children.
3 now.
3 now, thank you for that. And Antoine also authored a book with assistance from my late fiance, NFL writer Therese Paylor, titled Bet on Yourself, which you all have seen. So let's welcome Antoine to the I wanted to ask you, and I'm also trying to figure out how to make this chair go down because I feel like I'm like, okay, there we go. I felt really high from the ground. Who was the first person that you saw bet on him or herself?
I would have to say my mother. So obviously, I think just coming from where she came from, her upbringing, it wasn't in a sense of being a owner or a business owner, but the way she just carried herself, the characteristics that I've seen each and every day, the battles that she had to go through, and I just think about when you battle yourself, it's a certain type of characteristics that you got to have to pursue your dreams. And she kind of instilled in myself and my oldest brother just those type of characteristics. So just to be able to see her move on a daily basis, how to deal with people, that's who I can say I really bet on herself and got me to where I am today.
What are some of those characteristics?
Man, so you have to be resilient. You have to be consistent on the way that you approach life. You got to have faith. You got to be strong because, when you bet on yourself, it's going to be some ups, some downs, some tribulations, some hurdles that you got to get over. So those are some of the characteristics that I know for sure that, I got from my mother.
Okay. How do you think we can apply the framework of betting on ourselves and still being open to making changes when we have to change direction?
Yeah, so again, I think betting yourself it's a mindset, right? Like everybody don't have that mindset that they can go out and bet on themselves. And it's crazy to hear that because I feel as though I've been bet on myself since I was young. It's just internal fortitude that I'm gonna do this for me. But I've come across some people who don't have that ability. I'm not saying that anything is wrong with that, but people don't. And I kind of look at it as you look at like a Fortune 500 company or whatever, and they have a mission statement, and their mission statement is this is what we're based on. This is what we're based on. This is what we're gonna strive to try to get done. But then you can bring employees in, you can bring workers in, or whatever. And people from different places, they'll have different ideas of, hey, I don't think this works. I think we should go this way. I think we should go that way. And again, your mission statement is still the meat and potatoes of it. And just because you're going right when you thought you was going to go left doesn't mean that's wrong. So I just feel as though like betting on yourself is kind of the same way. Like you can have the core values of who you are. But again, at times you're going to have to come to a fork in the road where, man, I thought when I got here I was going to make it right, but I got to pivot and make this left, and nothing's wrong with that.
Can you think of a time when you had to make that pivot during your career?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I played with 4 different franchises. So coming in the league, say, Indianapolis Colts, I did great things there. I'm going to finish my career here. Now we don't want you back, so I had to go to San Fran. So for me, it's a pivot. Now it's a different pivot where I'm moving across the country. I'm leaving my wife. I'm leaving my child, my daughter at the time. So those are pivots that I had to make just in my particular field where just kind of refocus and gather myself.
Before I keep going, are there any questions, Louise? Is any?
Yes, there's. So we have a form, just so you know. It's sometimes anonymous questions, and there's one that says, "Not everyone has the mindset to bet on themselves. How do you train people, especially in corporate structures where taking risks, may not be encouraged? How do you train them to bet on themselves?"
That's a great question. Again, it's a mindset, so it's not going to be something that happens overnight. I think you have to put somebody through different situations and coach them. Like if you was in this situation, what would you do? And really have somebody there alongside them who lives that motto of I'm gonna bet on myself in every situation, every day of the week. So to be able to kind of walk that person through and, to your point, train them and say and put them in different situations and say these are some of the things you should look at and say, look, this is what a person that bet on themselves or herself, this is what they'll do in this situation versus a person who typically wouldn't bet on themselves, this is what they would do. So I like it to your point. I think it's really a training process that you got to put somebody through.
Just to chime in on that for 1 second, you all may remember in the book, It Was All a Dream. We read a book here, It Was All a Dream, which is about millennial Black Americans and their experiences and views of different things. That there's a chapter in there where she talks about Black Americans whose families immigrated in the last generation or two versus Black Americans whose families had been here for many generations. And she says at the Harvard Business School, it was 2 or 3 years ago, 80% of the Black Americans who were there were from recent immigrant families. And so there's a whole part in that part of the book, if you all remember, where she talked about essentially betting on yourself, how some communities are pushing people to bet on themselves more than others. Like immigrant families might be pushing them because they immigrated in. So I think it's interesting for those of us in this class, and we've been talking about how, as leaders, people from this class go into work at companies and nonprofits and government, how to think about with your teams and your employees, some may need more training or more backing, to know that they should bet on themselves.
It's funny you say that. So I own a restaurant in my hometown, and I own a trucking company. So coming from a team dynamic my entire life, like it's kind of easy for me to kind of bet on myself and also use my teammates per se to help other people grow, right? So when you talk about immigrants, they coming from probably a struggling situation where they're coming into the States to better themselves. Whereas, just say, my upbringing, we typically don't see wealth in the neighborhood, right? So it's, for some people, I'm gonna bet on myself to get myself out of this situation, get my family out of this situation. But for some people, when you get up every day and all you see is people not betting on themselves, it's kind of tough to get out of that mind frame. So to my point where I opened up a restaurant in my hometown to give opportunities, give jobs, and it's just funny where we have majority young Black men and women that's coming in and working, and I try to sit down with them and talk to them about bet on yourself, better in your life, and sometimes they just don't get it. So to your point, it's like you really have to really train them, sit down with them, and really talk about it, and like what is bet on yourself.
Did you get training in terms of like entrepreneurship during the time that you were at the NFL? And the reason I ask is because, some people who play in the NFL don't have careers as long as you did. And I just wondered if there was any sort of like training along that to help people.
I did it. I did get in training in the entrepreneurship world. It was kind of one of the things, like I said, I was going to bet on myself. Being able, I had a vision for myself where when I got done playing, I didn't want to go work for anybody. I wanted to be able to present opportunities to other people and have my own businesses. And again, I just feel as though and this is just me, entrepreneurship and playing in the NFL has a lot of similarities when you talk about it, where you starting a business from scratch, you got to put the hours in, you got to put the work in. It's heavy lifting, and it's just the same way that I was in my 14-year career. Obviously, in my book, we talk about just having great people in your corner. It's the same thing, you know, on the field, you got to have great people on the same mind frame, same path, and that's the same way in entrepreneurship and in the business world. You got to tap in with people that's been down that road already before you, so you can tap in with them. So it was kind of some similarities for myself.
Ebony, we have a question, speaking of the NFL, because you were there 14 seasons, right? 14, so that's a long time. So one of the class ones has asked, have you seen the NFL as a business and institution change during those years? And what change do you still want to see at the NFL?
NFL has and always will be a business. It's $1 billion business, whether you like it or not. If it's good business or bad business, it's business. I would say and I think everybody kind of hear it, is like just the diversity in the management, upper management. It's not enough black and brown, not enough women in upper management. Where you have a game where 85% of the players are African Americans, and then when you go to the front office, even head coaches, you don't see many black and brown people, and then even the women. You know, I just think it's the, as we call it, the good old boy system. You know, and the $1 billion industry is 2022, and we still talking about the same things. That's definitely a place where we got to see some change.
So ownership.
And then that's tough because ownership is families. So all they're going to do is just pass it down to their grandchildren, and so it's tough to really change that. I would say to see more diverse ownership.
On your podcast recently, speaking of ownership, you and your co-host talked about Magic Johnson. Can you talk a little bit about, like, do you see that as a viable option?
Maybe explain to the class what Magic Johnson's doing in case people don't know.
I'll let Antoine explain,
So, I mean, obviously, Magic Johnson, his work speaks for itself as far as what he's done in the business world. He's, I think you say, the Dodgers, the Los Angeles Sparks, I think the soccer team, and I think now he's in the bidding to, with a team to go after.
Was it Denver?
I think it was the Denver Broncos. And again, you know, to be able to have him in that ownership role, I think it's good, but I think people have to be intentional of what they're trying to do. And not saying that he's not, because I don't know what he does behind the scenes as far as, you know, trying to hire, you know, women or black and brown people. But you have to be intentional when you do get in that position. And a lot of times, what I've seen, I don't think a lot of times people are intentional in the work that they're doing when we talk about diversity.
Do you think a change at the ownership level would have more impact if there's more diversity there in terms of the upper management? Okay.
No question.
Okay.
No question. We kind of talk about it. You know, you tend to hire people that look like you. You know, we have these conversations in the locker room all the time. It's, because I would do the same thing. You know, if I got a job, I'm gonna go hire. You know, obviously you want to hire people that's qualified, but I'm gonna go hire somebody that, you know, I can go down and sit down at the bar with and have a drink with. So, not to say that it's wrong. It's just human nature. But, you know, definitely if we can have more diversity at the top, I think that would trickle down.
And someone in the class has asked specifically, if you owned an NFL team tomorrow, what would be like the 5 changes you would make?
First of all, what inside the building, what it looks like. Again, I've been in buildings 14 years, and you go upstairs. Obviously, the players' locker room and meeting rooms are downstairs, and the management is upstairs. So we always talk about upstairs. You know, the people upstairs. So if you go upstairs, it wasn't a diverse working environment. You know, so that would be the first thing that I would change. Another thing that I would change is that, and I always say, like, well, you know, if the owner's a billionaire, and we always talk about players and, you know, just the stat of players being broke after 3 to 5 years of playing. Like if the owner's a billionaire, why wouldn't he not say every business venture that he goes into, but there's guys in the locker room that's in the real estate. There's guys into the locker room that wants to be entrepreneurs. Like you have other billionaire friends. Like those guys, those women should be in the building, and teaching these players. That's one thing that I would definitely change
To help them with their whole career.
Yeah, exactly. Just help with the transition because the transition is tough.
Someone else in the class has asked about, speaking of that, what you could do to help players, financial literacy, and whether that's been something you think the NFL has helped people think about what to do with their money and
not as much as I think they should. And again, that is tough because financial literacy has to be taught. And then you think about 21-year-old guy that's probably coming from nothing. Mother, father, uncle probably know nothing about money. He's walking into money that probably his entire family has never seen before. But the NFL has to do a better job just off the field. They do present a lot of programs where guys can kind of dibble and dabble in different things, but again, being a $1 billion industry, you can do a lot to help these young men.
When you were, I'm sorry, Susan.
Can I ask a question about another group that I think of when I think about sports in general are agents?
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk about, have you seen agents be really exploitative? Is agents like an industry where Black people should try to get into if they want to influence the sphere? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
No, that's a great question because an agent is somebody that's has a lot of influence on their players, even though the agent works for the player. So I had my agent for the entire length of my career, and what he was able to do for me, not only on the field but off the field, just again being a mentor. That's definitely somewhere where the Black community to be able to get in and have diverse, but even women too. So now you're starting to see a lot of women get into the agency role as well. And a lot of times, as we all know, we have mothers. They just have a different viewpoint on a lot of different things, which helps these young men that needs that guidance. So that's definitely a place where you can see a lot of help there.
When you were in the NFL, were you active in the players union?
A couple years I was, but again, the player union is tough because it's different than the NBA where you have 12 to 15 guys on the team, right? And there you have your stars, really, Chris Paul, your LeBron James on the board, right? Whereas versus in the NFL, you have 65 guys, or really 70 guys on a team, 32 teams, and then a lot of the guys that can really make impact are the quarterbacks. They're getting their money, so it's like, okay, we don't want to mess up our good thing. So I was on a board for a couple of years, but that in itself is a tough spot.
Did you have to negotiate against the company or was it against the team?
So no, so you would negotiate against the owners. So it's the players against the owners, and then it's bad because our commissioner gets paid by the owners.
Okay. And so can you talk about what that experience was like?
It's a horrible experience. Like, the commissioner of the NFL gets paid by the owners. Like you got 32 billionaires, and the commissioner's getting paid $30-some billion a year. So of course, I'm gonna try to do my best to see both sides. But yeah, if they're paying me $30 million a year, so that's a tough place to be in, a tough spot to be in.
I mean, someone in the class has pointed out that, a lot of people come to business school, so probably many people in this class came to business school to change careers, to pivot. That's a lot of the reason people go. And so you've pivoted. And so the question is, what advice do you have for maintaining your confidence while charting an unfamiliar landscape?
Man, that's a great question, because I was struggling with that for a little bit. Just with, again, 14 years in the league, and that's just in the league, but I've been playing the sport for 8 years, well, since I was 8. And now I retired when I was 35, and now that's 27 years I've been doing something, and all of a sudden I drop it a dime. Like it's done. So it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Obviously, throughout my career, it's okay, what do I want to focus on when I'm done playing? That's one thing that, you always think about. When I'm done playing, you don't know when that time is going to come. It's going to be, a blink of an eye. But sitting at home and just thinking like, well, now, I want to go into entrepreneurship, and how does that look for me? It's my first time of really being an entrepreneur and put all the eggs in the basket. And it can be frustrating, but for me, I always find like that's where the joy comes out of it. Where this is something new. It's frustrating. I'm learning every day. I'm learning something new every day. I'm going through trials and tribulations. I'm jumping over hurdles. I'm tripping over hurdles. But then it's just a point where you have that one light of hope and like, man, this is where all this hard work is coming from. So if you can just think about, it's a light at the end of the tunnel. I think that's what was kind of refreshing for me, just knowing that this is something new. And you look at anybody that's successful, it's not easy. It's not easy. It's going to be a lot of hard work, and that's what did it for me. Just knowing the light at the end of the tunnel and knowing the impact that I would be able to have.
Someone else wants to know how you picked trucking and restaurants.
Trucking. Trucking was interesting, right? So I had one of my best friends I grew up with. He was incarcerated for 8 years, and while he was doing his time, we would talk, and he was like, man, I got my CDLs while I was locked up. I said, man, that was great. He was like, man, but it's killing me, man. I'm working like, so many hours, and my paycheck is like $5. I said, what? So really he was working for free, right? So I had another friend who was in a position where he was trying to, move away from his job. So I said, look, go get your CDLs, and I'm going to start a trucking company. I'm going to start a trucking company so when our other friend comes home, he'll be walking into a job. So that's really how I got into the trucking company. It wasn't something I was eyeing. It was really to help out a friend, and that's been going for 7 years.
Why was he only making $5? Was he paying a lot of fees, or?
It was just modern day slavery. That's what I kind of call it.
Okay.
It was, that's what it was. It was allowing him to. It was a small sense of freedom where he would get in the trucks and they would allow him to travel and do the work. But the hours, obviously, the hours that he was working, if he would have been working those hours as a free man, the pay rate would have been drastically different. But it was just heartbreaking to hear him say it, and then for him just to show us like his pay stubs. It was disheartening.
We have talked some in this class about mass incarceration because, of course, we're looking at the wealth gap. And Louise had an excellent thing that she shared recently on LinkedIn about entrepreneurship and how people use their family savings to get into it. But, of course, if you don't have a lot of family savings, that limits your ability to go in. Are you employing a lot of people that have been formerly incarcerated? Like, have you seen this through your work in entrepreneurship?
So it was actually a program that we wanted to start with the trucking business because just, guys and even women, I have women that drive trucks for us as well. So when they come out of the system, it's kind of one of the things that they can really kind of get to sooner than later and really make a good living. And we actually wanted to do a program where, coming out of the system and starting a program where they can, get on their feet and have a job. So we haven't, because it's a lot of other things that kind of go with that. It's a lot of limitations where you do have a felony on your record where, some places they can't drive, they can't get on Army bases and things of that nature. So it's a lot of hurdles that they have to jump over still. But that's definitely one of the things that, a lot of people coming out of the system turn to.
Antoine, thanks for being here. I remember watching you on TV growing up. So speaking of creating opportunities for other people. I imagine that there are a lot of people that you want to create opportunities for, and you have had an incredible privilege to play in the league and make a lot more money than other people.
Right.
And so the question is, how do you make those decisions about who to help, how to help? What are the ways in which you sort of evaluate what you're going to do and who you're doing it for?
So again, I go back to my community, the community that I grew up in, and just look at the need. So tap in with the local governments and say, hey, look, how can I help here? So again, just with the restaurant, that's something that I wanted to do, and being able just to help whoever. So again, with people that's coming home, hey, you can come here, you can wash the dishes, you can learn how to cook, you can serve, you can deal with the people. So that's something that was for me. But I just think if anybody wanted to go back and help, you got to ask yourself, like, what is your heart stand at? Because for me, I'm philanthropist. Like I want to give back to my community any way possible, and I'm able to go back to my community and see, okay, this is what the children need. This is what grown men need when we talk about like mental health. So for me, I just go back and just look at the people that I love, the people that I go back to my high school, I go back to my community and see what they're struggling with. So that's just how I feel like that's the way I can give back to my community.
It's an interesting observation because you thought about where do people need jobs, and so that's what you're creating. And a lot of people in their careers, you might be coming out of business school or coming out of college and thinking or whenever, how can I get the most prestigious job for me? How can I make the most money? But to flip it on its head and say, okay, I could work 10 different places, but which of the places could I work that will have jobs for people who need more help? And if that's a factor in your own choices of what you do with your time, that moves the needle.
And again, one of the big words you said, like, it's not all about the money neither. Like, you're like, okay, you have a lot of people that make money. Okay, it's easier for them to help people, but time is money too. So if you're able to set aside 30 minutes, an hour a week of your time to go into a community center, to go into wherever and give people some guidance and sit down and talk to somebody, that goes a long way too. Just with, we was kind of talking about on my podcast today where, it's just Mental Health Awareness Month, right? And, I said, like, this is probably one of the times where I've seen the most people commit suicide in my life. But it's just like, you got to be able to, put your arm around somebody. People going through things. So just, like, again, an hour a week just to sit down and talk with somebody, you don't know what that could do for them. So again, that's helping your community, that's giving back, and that's helping your people as well.
I think that's a really poignant point to end on.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.